The Umpire Inspire podcast is all about the stories, all about the journeys, and all about the heart of being an umpire. I'm your host, Jason Becker. Hi everybody, Jason here. Thank you so much for tuning in again to the Umpire Inspire podcast. We've got another great conversation with an umpire today that I know you're really going to like. For 7 years now, Elizabeth Hammerschmidt has been making her mark as a rising NCAA softball umpire. She's a current Big Ten crew chief who also works in multiple other college conferences. She's had conference championship and regional assignments every year since 2016, as well as a D1 super regional assignment in 2019. And she's the co-host of the Both Sides of the Mask podcast. In this conversation, Liz and I do indeed explore both sides of the mask, so to speak. The games, the approach, Liz's stories, her on-field experiences. But there's also a person wearing that mask, and we do get to the heart of some challenges that Liz has faced, balancing her family life with her pursuit of umpiring. That's something I can identify with as well, and also the enjoyment that she's found, bringing her family along for the ride. I really enjoyed learning more about what it's like to be an NCAA softball umpire, and I thoroughly enjoyed the opportunity just to spend some time with Liz, who is a true professional, but at the same time, so personable and plain-spoken, and certainly open to sharing her experiences and her thoughts. Please enjoy my visit with Liz Hammerschmidt. Liz, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, I am very, very thankful and honored to be on this show. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And you're out in the Midwest. Is that correct, Liz, Ohio?
Yes, I am.
Okay.
Actually, I'm originally from Akron, Ohio, and I reside in a little town called Ritztown, just outside of Kent State University. So about 20-minute drive from Akron, Ohio, if anyone knows where that's from. Good old LeBron James area.
Very good. That's right. This is a baseball and softball podcast, Liz. Let's stay on point here. Let's stay on point. Oh, that's okay. Liz, it's great to have you. And I've been looking forward to this. You and I have a couple things in common. Umpiring is only one of them. And that's going to come up a little bit later on in the show. But I think the biggest reason I've been so excited to visit with you today, Liz, is that you are a NCAA softball umpire. You have been doing it for a lot of years. You've got a great resume that's building up, and you've had some really great experiences. And that is an area that I know very little about and that we haven't really explored on this podcast. And so that's super cool. I'm really excited to hear about what it's like for you to be a college softball umpire, some of the games you've worked. That's going to be great. But before we get to all that, Liz, can you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and how you got into umpiring, maybe a little bit about your beginnings and who the people were that got you started?
Absolutely. I was a former D1 athlete at Kent State University. Played softball since I was the age of 5. Always had the love and heart for the sports. My freshman year, I was redshirting and just wanted to make some extra cash during the summer. Started just umpiring a local league that my brother-in-law was umpiring, and he said, "Hey, we need some more head count. Would you mind umpiring?" And I said, "Sure, why not?" Went to I think it was Kmart at the time, bought a powder blue shirt that was way
That's
oversized. At the time, you didn't know any better. I didn't really pay attention too much to the umpires except for the colors that they wore. So my brother-in-law was like, it doesn't matter, just get a powder blue shirt. Just wear your chest protector, your catching gear, you'll be fine.
Okay.
So I bought a gray pair of men's pants and, didn't know anything, didn't know any better. So it was kind of nice because, I felt like I was inspiring, the 10Us, a bunch of, 8, 9, 10-year-old girls running around, don't know any better, just playing ball, and didn't think anything of it after that summer, carried on, ended up moving on from college. After that, went to Sprint Nextel, still actively involved because my sister was still playing. She was 5 years younger than I was. And then 2012, starting to get a little bored with my job. It was just starting to become a little stagnant. There's a lot of questions of positions being released.
Right.
We weren't sure exactly what was going to happen, stuff like that. And at the time, didn't really realize it, but my future mentor was walking in and out of the door, like here and there. I would always see her, like always in some type of umpire uniform, like just craziness, still wearing her chest protector, still wearing whatever. And she was one of those who was like a little rec ball tournament, like assigner that, did a lot of the stuff in Ohio. And I remembered her doing a lot of my tournament games when I played travel ball. She did my college games, and I just recognized her, and her name was Umpire Kathy. That's how everybody remembered her. And mind you, this is in 2012. I made the mistake of asking her after about seeing her the sixth time in a row, fixing her phone and saying, hey, I used to umpire for a little bit. I go, how can I get back into it? I wouldn't mind doing this just, for some extra cash, just kind of get back in the game. And literally she goes, meet me here at this field on this day at this time, and I'll get you in. I said, whoa. I said, I don't have anything with me, I haven't had, catching gear or umpiring gear. And so as I was talking with her, she's like, oh no, you'll be fine. I'll take care of you. So I show up, it was like a Tuesday, and I show up at one of my local fields that I used to play in. She slams on her brakes. She goes, here, throws out literally a chest protector, shin guards, a shirt and pants. I go, Kathy, I said, what do I do? She goes, you know what to do, and drives off. I'm like, oh, yeah, I totally know what to do. So even though I know a lot about the game, but and I heard from one of your podcasts just recently, just because you play doesn't mean you know it all.
There you go.
Doesn't mean you remember everything,
That's right.
But let me tell you, I was hooked right from the get-go. I don't remember what my strike zone looked like. I don't remember what my facial expressions, my body language or anything was like. All I remember is just the first strike call. I was like, oh, I kind of like this. I kind of like knowing what's going on. I kind of missed that catcher's perspective of looking from behind the plate and getting that pitch coming in. And that's just when everything started. And after that, just on my days off, that time, mind you, my oldest was just getting started into a little bit of coach pitch, so I had some time to get some reps in. So I would do some local games. Then all of a sudden I got invited to do one of the biggest tournaments in Michigan. Mind you, I've only had a couple of weeks of training.
Oh my goodness.
And yeah. And Umpire Kathy goes, hey, we need some umpires up in Canton, Michigan, which is just right outside of Ann Arbor. She's like, why don't you come up here? And I was like, oh, sure. I used to play in that tournament. It's one of the biggest USA softball tournaments back in the, even when I played in high school.
Right.
It's a qualifier. And I get up there, and instantly I was in love with it. Instantly. I was there Friday, Saturday, Sunday, worked a ton of games. But than that, it was just like I was hooked. But at the same time, I had to sit there and think about it. I'm like, I'm still a young mother. I got to be realistic with this. This isn't something that, I could possibly do. And I just told Kathy, I was like, I can't invest too much time in it. Well, she wouldn't take no for an answer. So I still would work some rec ball games. I think I did some local rec ball tournaments, the season ending tournaments. And then I just called it a day. I didn't do anything for a full calendar year. That following year, that next summer, she already had plans for me. And this is I'm talking about, in the winter of 2013, she already had plans for my summer. I did some indoor stuff with her because, I'm not sure how it is out in the West Coast area. When it gets cold, we have domes or indoor buildings, that we use for tournaments and stuff like that, or games and stuff like that. So I started doing some training there, and then I took some more time off. In the middle of April, she calls me and she goes, hey, I need coverage at Westminster College. If anyone's familiar with Westminster College, it's a D3 school in the western part of Pennsylvania, about an hour drive from my house. I'm like, okay. I'm like, Kathy, I'm not even registered. And she's, don't worry about it. She goes, you have a uniform. She goes, you'll be with somebody, and you're just going to work a double header.
Let me jump in before you continue this story. What was your thought process right then? Did you feel what was your first Umpire Kathy? I love that. Umpire Kathy. When Umpire Kathy said, hey, you're going to work this, was your first reaction, oh yeah, you know what? I could do that. Or were you instantly intimidated by, oh my goodness, this is a D3 game. This is ridiculous. I didn't even think I was going to work at all.
those reactions, I mean, I had actually both. It was like up and down. Like at first I was like, oh, well, that's awesome. Okay, I'm looking at my schedule. I had 2 days off in a row. I'm like, yeah, I can do this. So um, I'm so excited. I met with my one partner, Tom, at the time, and we're driving, and all of a sudden, like, the butterflies start kicking in. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know all the rules just yet. I'm like, okay, so all the self-doubt, like I'm sure any umpire that has ever gone through that self-doubt started going through my brain.
Yeah.
And I started second guessing my motivation on this. And let me tell you, by the time I did step on the field, like just this full rush of excitement just went through me. I was like, I love this. I'm with college kids. The excitement of the game. And mind you, and at the time, I had no clue about the conference, but I was on the field with the 2 best teams in that conference.
Oh, of course.
Of course, right? So the game was a little intense, but I made it. I made it through after that doubleheader. And mind you, I never even asked. I know some umpires are big into this. Some aren't in it for the money, but I never asked how much it was going to be. But when I realized how much my check was going to be, I'm like, I want to do this. This is something I definitely want to continue doing.
A small paycheck sounds like it made it a feasible, realistic possibility for you.
It definitely did put that in my brain. I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh my gosh, if I did, so many double headers in a week, that's more than what I'm getting paid right now. On a biweekly status, I'm sitting there thinking, like, if I did that, but then reality had to set in. I'm like, also this is the Midwest, we have to think about, it still snows in the middle of April. We get a lot of rain in the Midwest, stuff like that had to sink in, but that didn't stop me from wanting more. And, let me just tell you, after that, like I think I did 8 double headers for her without being registered for the NCAA. And after that, I was like, okay, what do I need to do to get more involved? And it started from there.
So the switch is flipped in your head and you're going to go for it. And that's where you find yourself with your next umpiring opportunity.
Absolutely. So just to take one extra step back from this, I actually recently just quit my job. I full-time, I had free benefits. I shouldn't say free benefits. I had full-time benefits. I had a free phone, mind you, no cell phone bill. So I'm stepping away from something that was such an uncertainty. And I just remember talking with my husband, Nick, and talking with my family. They all thought I was crazy. Absolutely thought I was crazy. They're like, you can't do this. You can't be doing tournaments. Your kids are young. You're walking away from a full-time job and benefits. I mean, everything that was thrown at me that was a negative. I'm sitting there looking at the end of the road going, no, this is something that could be big, because I knew how valuable it was. And I knew I had something special ahead of me. I just knew I was the only one that actually knew about it. So I convinced everybody. I was like, listen, I'm going to go to this tournament. It's Thursday through Sunday. I'll be back Sunday evening. It's only 2.5 hour drive. No big deal. So when I get there, I meet Rick Havercraft, who was at the time the Mid-American Conference Division I coordinator for umpires, the MAC, which has my alma mater, Kent State, has, Buffalo, Toledo, just to name a few of the schools that are in that conference. And I just worked a couple days, and he comes up to me. He goes, you are something special. He's like, I would love to give you games in the MAC in this fall, and then possibly for the following season, 2014 season. I said, I go, really? I said, I'm not really sure if I'm made for that, because I'm sitting there going Division I. I'm like, there's just no way I'm ready for this. So by that time, I ended up having the championship game for the 18 and under division, because there was from 10U up to 18U. I ended up doing that championship game on the plate.
You must have had a nice little tournament there, Liz.
I didn't think, at the time I'm sitting there going, I'm just doing this because I'm just trying to get better. My whole mindset was I want to get better. There's so many great umpires that were there that were, have much more experience, much more, years under their belt, and I ended up getting that opportunity.
Wow.
And I just wanted to keep getting better. I was just I was a sponge at that time. I'm sitting there thinking, I have, things in the back of my mind going, I wonder how the kids are doing. Obviously I was staying in communication, still a little bit of guilt trips for my family, but I'm sitting there going, man, I'm just all in, hands all deck. That's how it was. So I get an email from Rick about a couple days later, and he invited me into his conference, assigning site, which we use Arbiter, which a lot of officials know exactly what Arbiter is. That's where a lot of other sports use, like basketball and football and so on. And I'm just like, wow, this is for real. This is for real. And when I showed my family, they're like, "Oh, that's great, but what about your kids?" So that, so that kept playing,
Wow.
a role. And I think, I'm jumping ahead. I think that role of being a mother, being a female in our sports, whether it's baseball, softball, it doesn't matter what sport, and being an official has really starting to make a change. And it's being looked a little differently than it was, this was, back in 2014 when I was getting a little bit of this side feedback from my family, what I'm
Right.
saying?
Could I follow up on that just a little bit, Liz? And
Sure.
as much as you're willing to share about this, but it sounds to me like there was some pretty hefty conversations that had to have gone on between you and Nick, your husband, when you first started to make that decision to take this seriously and to go ahead and take off for 4 or 5 days and go work this tournament, to pursue this. And how did you navigate that?
It was definitely a challenging time in our lives. I've always been a hard-nosed, direct, type A personality type of person, once I have something on my mind, I go 100% on it. Um, you know, uh, my parents, they, when they viewed me umpiring, they look at it as like how my sister and I played travel softball and how we played high school softball. It was cute at the time, but that now it's time to grow up. That's, they just
Yeah.
still had that parent mentality on me.
Huh.
So yeah, the conversations were very difficult. It was very straining on my relationship with them. It was really straining on, my marriage. But here's the thing. I look back at that and how much more value it had with my children, because I saw that my kids were starting to get involved in taking interest in sports, especially softball. Natalie was, starting coach pitch at that time. Caitlin, she was still young, but she started to pique some interest. And when they would actually come with me to some of the local rec games. But they saw what I was doing, but they were also kind of studying the game at the same time. Not like 100%, because attention spans with kids. But they saw how happy I was, and they understood at that young of age that, hey, this is what mommy does.
Oh, that's
And
great.
oh, absolutely. And now, fast forward, they're 14 and 12. They're old enough to come with me to some of the events, like Natalie's come with me to Notre Dame. She's come with me to Virginia Tech. I can go more and more on that. Caitlin's been with me to go to Dayton, and I can go on and on about it, but like they have got to experience in the last several years how important it is to me, and like just how big the events are. And it's something that they are super proud about. They talk about it. Their friends, their teammates are jealous of like some of the locations they've been to. And they've actually invited some of their friends to come along with some of the trips. If it's a local trip, that's something I can drive to and from at the same day. Like Pittsburgh is probably one of them. They'll bring a friend or two, and they'll get to sit in the stands and watch, or they'll go
Yeah.
do their teenage things.
I think that's really great, Liz. And they're proud of mom when they're sitting out in the bleachers, right? And they get it that you are I've talked about this on the show before, that because I've had the same experience with my kids. My kids are 16, 18, and 20. And they've grown up with dad as a coach and a umpire now for some years, and as a ball player still. And they just see dad striving for something that's important to him and giving it his full effort. And I think that's super important for a kid, especially as they enter those teenage years, right? A 12 and a 14-year-old in your house. Oh my gosh, to see mom out there working hard and going through the things that an umpire goes through, dealing with adversity. And I guess the part I'm trying to emphasize is I think it's really cool that they recognize that.
I'm super proud of them for recognizing that, because they see how important it is to me. But here's what's funny. There's some couple points on this, is that they actually listen to my conversations that I have with fellow umpires and colleagues, or I'm on the phone with some umpires that are trying to move up the ranks. And they'll come to me like after a game, if I'm at one of the others, or something happens on the field, they'll come to me like, "Mom, was that right?" I said, "No, it should have been this." And they're like, "That's what I thought." But they know not to be arrogant with an umpire. Like if an umpire makes a mistake on the field, and this has happened just recently, an umpire missed a strike, and Caitlin's behind the plate as a catcher, and And she said, she goes, he apologized to me for missing that strike. And she goes, it's okay. She goes, my mom's an umpire too. You guys do make mistakes. And he goes, oh, that's cool. So you understand.
I'm telling you, man,
So,
there's so many life lessons with what we do. And I would like to think that my kids pay attention and notice those things as well when I'm working games, when they see me having a tough conversation on the field, or when we discuss something that happened. And without question, they are tired of dad relating everything that happens in life to some sort of umpiring story or lesson.
uh-huh.
I mean, especially my youngest, she'll just roll her eyes at this point. I'll say, it's like umpiring. Here we go. But that's just how it is.
Uh-huh.
Too bad, kid. Deal with it.
Right.
Oh, man. Well, Liz, good grief. Where were we?
I told
you.
My subjects, they'll go all over the place. So I hope everyone's going to be entertained by this.
But it's good. I enjoy hearing about it. A lot of us are family men, family women, and we all deal with a lot of the same challenges and struggles, and that's why I kind of wanted to ask about those first beginnings. Keep going with your story. You're about to step onto your first D1 field, and where did that lead you, and then where does that bring you up to today?
So, after talking with Rick about, the MAC conference, in August, I started getting some arbiter emails, and it was starting to get for real. And then, my mentor, umpire Kathy, she's like, this is in the middle of September. She was like, next week, there's a huge tournament down in Clearwater, Florida. She's like, I need you to go down there. And I'm like, Kathy, I said, I can't just up and leave my family. And I said, I don't have enough money for a flight. It's going to be way too expensive at the time. And she's like, no, I need you to get down there. You don't understand. It's going to be one of the biggest tournaments in clinics, because what they try to do is if they have like a certain tournament based on who's down there, they will turn those into a college showcase camp, not only for the athletes, but also for the umpires.
Oh, okay.
And to be evaluated. So finally talked Nick into it, and he's like, here, just take my car. And I had no idea like what I was getting myself into. And so I drove 16 to 18 hour drive all the way down from Akron, Ohio.
Awesome.
I drove all the way down there and had no idea what I was getting myself into. All I knew is that I had just 4 uniforms in my back, my car, which was, 2 plate and 2 bases. So I get down there, it ends up being like there was like over 100 umpires there that were there to be evaluated at this camp, and there was like different locations. And what I didn't realize is that the umpire in chief for the NCAA, which we call the supervisors of umpires, Donna Varanovac, was there along with the rest of the staff and along with coordinators from the Big Ten, which is now my Big 10, Big 12 coordinator, Sally Walker. And some other coordinators, which now the SEC coordinator is different now. By that time, she was down there, and then the ACC coordinator was down there, the Pac-12 coordinator. I mean, every like all these big World Series umpires were there, and I had no idea who these people were because I didn't really pay attention at the time. Didn't realize how big this was I was getting into. I only recognized a few people's names, so I really had no idea what I was getting myself into. I ended up doing 3 games on a Friday, 3 games on a Saturday, which you rotated. So you did the play game off, and then you did, third, and then you did first. So you just rotated that way. And my best evaluation came from her lady's named Chris Drum. She's from the SoCal area. She's actually scheduled to do the Olympics this coming year, 2021. She's done multiple World Series. She was my evaluator. Changed my life forever because of how she explained things, how I need to position myself, and just some of the encouraging information she was providing. Then after that, not knowing who Sally Walker was, comes up to me on Sunday, and she goes, expect an email from me in the next couple of weeks. I'm looking at her. I said, oh, okay. I go, what's it for? I'm like so oblivious to everything. She goes, I want you to work some games. She's like, I want to see you. She's like, I also assigned the Summit League, the Missouri Valley Conference, because she just picked up those 2 conferences. And along, she's the assigner for the Big Ten, which that was her first year.
This is an obvious recurring theme with you, Liz. Right? You go work games. Mm-hmm. You want to improve. You're having some fun. And people keep on telling you, hey, you're good. Let's go do the next thing?
I was just so thankful and just impressed with like that they were putting so much trust in me. And I think it had a lot to do with, my poise of being an athlete, of like having to deal with all the trials and tribulations of being an athlete, win, loss, and just having to hold your composure. One of the top things that they got out of me was that I was always willing to learn. I took the criticism lightly. I took it to heart when I did something, if I made the wrong move, and I made sure I remember that. And here's the other thing, and this is a point to all the young officials out there. And I don't mean young in age. I'm talking about the ones that are still trying to move up the ladder, is always carry a little notebook with you. Write down any information, whether it's criticism, instructional criticism, or if it's a good, bad, anything that you have done that you can remember that's going to implement into your next game. That's what you need to do to be able to help yourself. Have something with you so that way it shows that you're taking initiative of what's happening now. It's
showing something. You're deliberately choosing to make a point of writing this thing down. And that shows something to your evaluators. You're the second person to tell me that on this podcast.
I remember.
Back in season 1. Do you? Yeah, back in season 1, young Mr. Sabal, David Sabal, said that was one of the things that his mentor taught him and that has served him very well. Young 18-year-old umpire, he's going to be in the bigs someday. Oh, he's going to be amazing. And he's got his little notebook with him at every single game. I have to confess, I don't have a notebook with me. I think this is convincing me that I need to invest in a small little notebook. I'll do it. I'm doing it. David, Liz, for you two, I'm doing it. That's so awesome. So we're gonna jump ahead a fair bit here, Liz, because from where we just left off, you just kept on working, you kept on rolling, you kept on grinding, and by this time, by the year 2020, you've put together a mighty fine little resume. Regional tournament games, super regionals. You've been a crew chief for several years now, and national championship games. I wonder if you might just spend a few minutes telling me about just what it's like to be a softball umpire in the big game. What's it been like umpiring some of those big tournament games and some of the cool opportunities that you've had? They have definitely been, as you say, cool. I mean, they definitely have been overwhelmingly amazing. It takes a special character to be able to hold in that anxiety, because it is full of anxiety. There's just a different animal. It's a different animal when you step onto the field. And my first experience with such a big crowd was actually at the Big House at Michigan for my very first regional game. When I say that it was overwhelming, I mean, they fit over 2,000 people in the stands, not to mention they have an alumni band that comes and plays. They have an overwhelming amount of fans that have been there since the day that head coach has been there. And if I could tell you that I was nervous and I was stuttering, oh, yes, I was. So, that's the truth. But, yeah. And, not to mention, like, games were starting to get televised, a little bit more. And this was year 2016. I've been in some championship games. I was at the D2 Nationals in 14 and 15. Being at Michigan in 2016, that was exciting. Any advice I can give to anybody that's worked in some of these high-profile games is you have to tune out the noise and just embrace the energy that's in those fields. It's an exciting moment, and like when you can embrace that energy, you almost zero everything out, and your tunnel vision is just on the pitcher and the catcher and the batter, and it slows everything down. You get excited. You feel like you're really part of the game. And I'll be honest with you, most of the time when I am on TV, I forget that I'm on TV because I'm just in the moment. I'm in that area that's of excitement. What do you mean exactly by embrace the energy? Is it just as simple as acknowledging, okay, this is a big game, and yet I'm just going to go do what I'm trained to do? Well, just like you said, I mean, just you're in that moment. You're in that, that energy. But what helps you stay in that moment is when you hear the crowd and the excitement, that roar, when right before, almost kind of like that beginning before a first pitch, and they'll have, the theme song come on. Okay. That's when you're locked and loaded. Oh man, does that make you feel so good? And when you have partners out there that have that same feedback, that you're ready to go. So Liz, I've mentioned a couple times now that I know almost nothing about NCAA softball. talk to me, okay? Talk to me and tell me, as an amateur umpire, what is it like? What would surprise me about working at that level? What are the things that I, as an amateur umpire, might not expect or be prepared for working that high level of softball?
Any of the, at the collegiate level, a lot of these coaches are very well educated. A lot of them, these jobs their jobs are on the line. So they're going to test you. They're going to test your knowledge. And to be honest with you, the majority of the Division One or at any level, they know where you're supposed to be when it comes to rotations and mechanics. The
good ones do, for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So, I mean, they get paid the big dollars to know the rule book. They get paid the big dollars to know where you need to be.
Yeah.
And the college level is a lot of fun because you get to go to all these different venues, these top-notch venues, it's very professional, and they do treat you very well when you get to that top level. But the whole status is that you have to be able to stay professional. And what I mean by that is that your social media lifestyle has to be shut down for a short period of time. Your social life outside of the stadium has to be professional, whether you're going out to dinner, how you're spending your time off the field. And that's the big thing with college softball is, it's integrity. We carry ourselves with that high standard.
Even going out to dinner, even on social media, you're still a representative.
100%. And how you carry yourself, it goes a long way with, how, because again, they are looking at you as soon as you step on the field. They're looking at your profile before you even know they're looking at your profile. And it could be for a good thing. They want to make sure they're getting a good character on the field that respects the game, respects the athletes, and respects the NCAA, because that's what's expected out of them with their contracts.
Well, Liz, finally, all of this umpiring talk leads us into a different sort of direction that you and I have in common, and that is hosting an umpire podcast. Liz, you're on my umpire podcast right now, but guess what? You have your own.
I do.
and I know that's been a lot of fun for you. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about your show and what you guys have been up to this year, and sort of what some of your goals are there.
It's been a whirlwind of just amazement,
A whirlwind
Tony
of
Williams.
Amazement. I love that. Yes, that's
yeah, right.
That's the best way to describe it.
When I was talking about how you have certain people in your circle that you continually talk with, and whether in and out of the season, those umpires are trying to move up or just your fellow colleagues. Tony Williams from Springfield, Missouri, him and I started pretty much around the same time. He was about a year behind me.
Okay.
We've been talking for several years, and I think the last 2 years we kept joking about starting this podcast, and we're just like, oh, when are we going to start this? Oh, when are we going to start this? And finally, when the whole COVID thing happened, I think it was about 2 weeks into the whole COVID shutdown, I was like, Tony, damn it, let's get this started. And yes, I just cursed, but that's exactly what I said to him. Tony's a great guy. He's got a teenager at home, or soon to be teenager. She's 12, and he's got a 4-year-old, soon to be 5-year-old. So, big gap in between. So he's got, 2 daughters. Him and I kind of have the same kind of give back when it comes to umpiring. His family's understanding but not understanding, so we kind of have that in common. So we kind of work things out with both of us. But anyway, our podcast was designed to just have the umpires in mind, but not just the umpires, but just in the people that are involved in sports in general, just to have something to listen to, because we both are advocates of listening to podcasts. I have some that are more in the topics of powerlifting, weightlifting, strength, and I like listening to stuff like that. So totally different. And he's into different things as well. But so our page is basically just to create a fun atmosphere so that anyone can listen to, whether it's coaches, athletes, and we talk about softball. Yes. We talk about officiating. Yes. But guess what? We also talk about life. We talk about the events that happen, but the amount of support that we've gotten is just amazing. And we thank all those listeners that have helped us along the way. And please definitely listen in. It's called Both Sides of the Mask. You can find it on Spotify, Apple, Google Podcast, Anchor FM if you want to download that app. We have a Facebook account, Instagram. We have Twitter. I try to get on there as much as I can. But we're a huge advocate for all officials. we try to post as many things as we can for all the other sports. It's not just about softball, not just about baseball.
I like listening to your show because you just sort of get to know you and Tony. And a lot of podcasts are like that. They just, the hosts and some of the guests just sort of become to be your friends, and you get to know a little bit about them, a little bit about their motivations. You connect with some things that are going on in their lives. I've joked with you offline that I feel like I've got to know your girls really well. Like, wow, I wonder how soccer practice went for Caitlin last week. I got to find out. And so that's part of the fun. And so I enjoy listening to you guys and just sort of seeing what's up. And I think that's what I like most about your show. I do encourage people to check that out. Well, Liz, we've covered everything there is, right?
I mean, we can keep going on if you really want to.
Just about. No, it's good. And I just want to thank you again for your time. I want to encourage people to check you out, Both Sides of the Mask, and you can find them on Facebook and all the rest of the podcast platforms. I think that both you and I, Liz, will have a little bit of a different show come this time next year, won't we? I think when we're back to working games regularly, I think that'll be interesting to see what happens.
Definitely I appreciate it, and I appreciate the support. I love supporting other officials, especially getting to know you, getting to meet you on this podcast. Listening to your podcast has been a joy, just like the different avenues. And I'm telling you what, just having those major league umpires and also that young 18-year-old that you had on there, that's inspiration itself.
Oh, for
If
sure.
anyone's not inspired by that at being 18 years old, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, that's probably the best thing you can do is start. And that's my best advice. Start young, because you have so many windows of opportunity. That is just an inspiration itself.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Liz, this has been great. All the best to you and to Tony with your show, with Nick and the girls, and making our way through all this. And I hope that you and I will have a chance to visit again very soon.
Absolutely. Keeping tabs, and we'll have you as a guest. How about that?
Oh, I like the sound of that. Let's talk.
Sounds good, Jason.
All right, Liz, thanks again. Talk soon.
I appreciate everything. Thank you.
All right, there you have it. Great stuff there from Liz, right? It was so cool for me to become better acquainted with the NCAA softball side of umpiring, and I really hope you enjoyed learning about that as well. Hey, check out Liz's podcast when you get a chance, Both Sides of the Mask. You can find that wherever you get your podcasts. And finally, I definitely want to mention yet another way that Liz is giving back to the umpire community. She's a member of a committee of female umpires assembled by the good folks at umpire.com. This committee is taking on the challenge of improving the development and availability of umpire gear and apparel specifically suited for female umpires. How cool is that? Well, thanks again for listening today. I'd like to remind you that the Umpire Inspire podcast is listener supported. And I want to welcome and thank Manny Salazar, who became a contributor this week. You can learn all about supporting the show and the rewards that you can earn, as well as some of the other efforts underway here at Umpire Inspire, efforts that your contributions make possible at umpireinspire.com/support. Thank you for spending time with us today, and I will see you next week on the Umpire Inspire podcast.